Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I can't hear you. You must be hearing me loud. I know a few people are still joining in. We have a lot of people already in the participants I can see in the attendees. You must be struggling to find, are you on video? Are you on mute? Not on mute, etc., etc. Don't worry. You are pretty much connected with us. You are connected to us through the chat. On your screen, you'll find there is some small icon called chat and a Q&A. You can always reach out to the panelist here with your questions, your comments, and within yourself also, you can have a conversation. If you want to specifically reach out to panelists, you can select a panelist option. If you want to reach out to everyone, sharing your comments, experience, please feel free to do so. We are looking forward to as much as possible comments and experiences from you all in this chat. You can always save this chat as well as you go ahead. Interesting time, isn't it? This is a time of talking about crisis. We have seen multiple kinds of crisis in the past, heard of crisis management, etc., etc. We have talked about disaster management, and so on and so forth. Today we're talking of a crisis, which is, and I don't want to get into crisis. What is the crisis? If you just, it's like you open your TV news channels, you open your mobile phone, WhatsApp, you pick up a line and talk to anybody in the world today, friend, office. You spend 10 minutes out of 60 minutes of a call talking about COVID-19. So we don't want to even talk about what it is, where it triggered, which country's view on it, and etc., etc. What we're going to talk today is how some of the leaders from the industry responded to this crisis. They will share their experience. And I very fondly call them COVID warriors. Similarly, there are social COVID warriors. These are business corporate COVID warriors. They're keeping the corporate they represent. And many of you who have joined on the call, you are the COVID warriors. You are keeping the corporate which you represent up and running. You are supporting the economy to sustain, and so on and so forth. So it's not easy to work from many times from a remote location, office, and so on and so forth in this situation. What I'll do is I'll just give you a little background of this, the webinar. As you know, this webinar is all about looking at and hearing the experiences on responding to the crisis. The most critical piece here is sustaining service excellence and beyond. So it was not just about responding, but also to sustain that excellence, what they are known for, and also continue with it. And I'm delighted to have a very powerful panelist with me, a powerful panel with me, with leaders like Karthikeyan Velu. He represents Bharti Airtel. He's a Senior Vice President Finance and a Head of Global Shared Services for Bharti. Reena Sharma, she is from UBS. She is Executive Director with UBS. Sanjay Gupta, Chief Architect, Shared Services Forum, and I'm sure many of you know him very fondly because he's one of the front faces on Shared Services Forum. He is the architect behind even looking at the theme and so on and so forth. G. Venkatramanan, as we call him fondly, GV. He's the head of Olam Global Business Services. Binu John, she represents Cummins Business Services. She is Regional Services Leader and Interim CIO for Cummins Business Services. Rahul Puri, Head of Employer Relationship with ACCA, and myself. I'm Rakesh Sinha. I'm an Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer with our Velu Group. And I also have a privilege of initiating this Shared Services Forum about 10 years back. We're almost pretty much in the 10th year. So thanks for the time. Thanks for taking this time out to join for this webinar. And I'm sure you will be delighted after the 75 minutes of hearing some interesting comments from you. As we go ahead, some rules of the game for all of us. all the participants are kept on mute by the moderator. So just to ensure we have a quick transition between the panelists, and we will enable each one of you to participate through a couple of things. There will be a question answer option, so you can through chat. Obviously, as I mentioned, you can obviously chat with the panelists. You can also post your questions in Q&A. At the same point of time, we will keep it very interactive. There are some online polls which will come, and we'll start some online polls. We'll request you to participate, respond to the polls, and at least we'll get a view of 100 plus leaders on some of the topics. This is also being live streamed on YouTube and the Shared Services Forum website. So if somebody was not able to register because the seats were full, we actually had a challenge to apologize to some of the leaders who were very keen to join in. So we ensured that the live streaming of it on Shared Services Forum website. Great. So just building on the context a bit in terms of how it is being in terms of being in this crisis. This is a global crisis. This global crisis leading to global disruption. We keep talking about many crises of the past, 2008, 1930s, etc., etc. I think 2008 was still a crisis of a different nature. This is much larger than that, many times larger than that. If you want to compare it, you can compare the nearest comparable looks like with the Great Depression of 1930s. But honestly, let me tell you, this is greater than that, and we can call it Greater Depression. Many terms are being used now: catastrophe, disaster, calamity, whatnot. But let me honestly tell you, it seems to be a good inflection point for the world, for the global leadership, to see how to rebuild your strategy from here. This is going to cause impact to social, political, economical, industrial impact. Everything will have to relook. Unlike 2008, which was primarily impacting BFSI with the Great Depression, with the stock market falling, this time it's all industries, all geographies, all strata of people, all economical levels of the people, and so on and so forth. The interesting piece of this crisis is the kind of a job losses you are expecting could be as high as 80 million people losing their job in just US. The price of crude, you talk about price of crude, it was always a talk of for a different reason. Now there are a lot of memes on the social media, as you know, about the future price is in negative. And people are not even aware what is going to happen. Is it going to be all over in the next 1 week of time, 1 month of time, 3 months of the time? That unpredictability is creating furthermore anxiety and the challenge in the mind of this crisis. The impact on the, if I have to just look at it from the business services industry standpoint, there are many clients, many sectors like travel, hospitality, aviation, banking services, they are majorly impacted. But it is not limited to some of these sectors. There are many other sectors also being impacted. There's also already a thinking about delay in decision making. A lot of investments which were there in the pipeline is deferred. There's a cash crunch. Everybody's talking about conservation as mantra. BCP was not stress tested the way it is. The contingency was never envisaged. Now everybody is talking about work from home, but work from home came along with a lot of concerns in the information security. The same point of time, this crisis also provided an unseen, unprecedented understanding of what IT really means. IT has become really the backbone of this industry, social, political life. Today, we are able to connect with each other is thanks to that telecom IT connectivity. IT is considered obviously as a backbone. In the same point of time, IT-enabled services is becoming very essential services. In fact, if you look at even NASSCOM has gone ahead and took ITS from a government of India point of view as an essential services. And that makes a lot of difference. And that also confirms the kind of industry we are representing, because this industry is now being valued as essential services because it requires to keep functioning, to keep the front end of the many companies and businesses to run. It really impacts, the business services really impact the economy in some form and fashion, in a different way to look at it. Still, there's a lot of uncertainty. The whole gamut of data privacy, cyber security, etc., needs to be understood. People are contemplating what to do about the offshoring strategy, how to go about the captive, how to go about outsourcing if they have to look at. There's a lot of pressure from the headquarters because they are facing the pressures of this economic crisis, and in turn there's a pressure on the shared services both globally and India. The global centers are as much as struggling as much as India centers, because there's a lot of similarity from that perspective. With this context, I just wanted to build the conversation ahead, and I would request one of my esteemed panelists, Beenu John, to share her experience in terms of how you reacted or responded to this crisis in your organizational context, Beenu. And before Beenu, you come in, I just want to make one more comment for the benefit of everybody as a participant and part of this webinar. You can see we have a very diverse presence of panelists here. Karthik representing a telecom company, Venu representing an engineering machinery, if I have to say, GV representing more an agri kind of industry, Rahul from a education point of view, Sanjay is coming from an industry platform, Reena is coming from a banking financial services. So we have a very diverse presence from industry point of view, and that was the intent as well. So with this, I pass it on to Beenu to hear some of your experiences we'd like to share with the team here. Over to you, Beenu.
Sure. Thank you so much, Rakesh. Thank you for that introduction, and a very good afternoon to everybody. There are about 47 of you who have joined the session, so thank you all for joining in. And before I really pick on the topic that Rakesh just mentioned, a quick 1-minute introduction. So I'm responsible for Cummins Business Services, which is basically the shared services on HR, IT, finance, and travel in India. The scope is all focused towards India. It is we do not do global work from India. And before this, I used to head the Global Shared Services Center of Air in Ericsson before my stint here in Cummins. And we have about, it is a manufacturing-based organization in the automotive industry. Our key business is engines. And, as Rakesh already mentioned, the pressure that has been on the system because of this situation that we have, and of course, the manufacturer had a lot of impact because of this. At the same time, I want to focus on, how did we really respond to the crisis? My team, how did we go about with it, and what were some of the steps that we took? The first thing I'd like to mention was at the top of everything, whether it was service we were doing, the delivery, etc., the safety and the security of the employees is the utmost. And this is something right from our CEO that, even if our plant closed, but the safety of our employees is extremely critical and, cannot be compromised about. The second that I want to talk about is when I had joined the organization years, one of the things we noticed was literally an outage on a network, at least 2 to 3.
I think there was some network challenge with Venu. It appears that she has dropped off the link. We'll wait for her to come back as she's coming back to the link. I think it was interesting as she was talking about the safety of employees, and I think that becomes a very interesting point in terms of looking at how you go about responding to the crisis, because it becomes taking very inclusive way of saying people are with me, and now first let me take care of you and then go ahead with what kind of next strategy, etc., etc. I think what I'll do now is I'm going to request you all to do a response to a poll. And this is the first question which is coming on your screen now. There's nothing like KBC where you have to lock immediately, but there'll be some options. And what we would request you with this question is, if you guys, including the panelists, please, you can respond to it. Please respond what is the most relevant option of this few option which is mentioned there, which you think respond to the question. You may opt beyond 1 to even 2, but don't go beyond 2 is my request. So this is the poll here for you. Can you guys see the poll, please?
My sincere apologies. I'm sorry I had some network issue all of a sudden, which was perfectly fine till now.
No problems, Binu. I think what we have done is now we have started with the poll and we just use the time to do a 30 seconds of quickly. So you can see that poll on your screen as well, and it's good time to receive some inputs from the audience as well. So I'm just giving 30 seconds of time to everyone to participate in this poll and respond before I close this poll.
Rakesh, it says host and panelists can't vote.
No worries, Sanjay. The panelists can share their views and give me the poll separately, and I'll plug the data.
Yeah. But I think I can.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjay. So as we are on with this poll now, I can see about 50% people already voted. It's progressing. 65% people have voted. Wonderful. 5 more seconds. Yeah, we're close to 70%. So we'll leave it open for another 10 seconds. Venu, back to you now, if you want to continue with your presentation.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks, Rakesh. Let me know once you can see my screen. I'm sharing my screen now.
Yeah.
I can still see the poll up. So just let me know, Rakesh, once the poll is done. Okay. Sorry. So I was on the second point where I was talking about outages that, continuously were happening. So the way I look at it is one very big and important strategic decision that we took, and actually it took us a good 2 years to really implement it 100%, was really the upgrade and the revamp of our IT infrastructure. And mainly when I say that is the network. So when we looked at the network, it was, of course, first of all, getting that alignment from the the leadership in terms of the budget. Second went on to change even our internet service providers. Third was to increase the bandwidth that we did. Fourth was also we had to do some point-to-point kind of connections that are there. So major activity that went over 2 years actually is paying out for us now, because now when I have 10,000 plus employees sitting at their homes and working, I can really tell you confidently, we have had absolutely no issues when it came to the network. We now don't have issues. Of course, now when I was working, I was on my home network, but otherwise network as in connecting to the VPN, connecting to do any activities that are there, we really did not have any issues. This third thing that I would really call out was, while this was going on, and I remember it was early days in early March, where I actually got my team huddled together to say, suppose we end up in a China situation, then what? And each of the service lines in my team, we actually decided that we will go process by process and map out which is the process that will get most impacted if we were to be in a China situation. And I'm so glad today that we actually did that, because we did that. We took some, what do I call it, before the lockdown, we took actually some steps, which was we further increased our bandwidth. We actually went ahead and got more licenses of VPN. We also arranged more number of laptops, SIM cards, in case, people don't have, in India, not everybody really has a network connection at home. And we didn't want to go with that assumption. So we even got SIMs so that we could give people, if they wanted hotspot, to use it as a hotspot. And we also got some additional, and SIMs we got around 1,000 odd, and data cards we had already in stock with us around 500, which we further distributed. And what we ended up doing is we distributed most of this before the lockdown. We of course did get some demand even after the lockdown started, but because we have some other means by which we could pass on those machines, we even managed to do that. So some of those things that we did proactively really helped us. We also looked at processes like onboarding and FNF. I would say in my own team, we did the onboarding of about 3 resources remotely. And believe me, that went very smoothly. While we used to actually have a 4-day full 8-hour session, that is what we were used to always. And suddenly we were very easily able to switch to a remote or a virtual onboarding. FNF process also was actually revisited also. And we started looking at how we could do the FNF in a remote situation. And what is it that we can do? So connections, etc., can be disconnected remotely. It's not necessary, except for the physical laptop that needs to be given, and then, of course, in all this, what was the 2 most important activities? Again, in a crisis situation, what do we focus on most critically rather than everything? And we said 2 most important things. One is, of course, the payroll, the March payroll. So bang enough on 31st of March in the morning, everybody got payroll as any other normal day. And again, month close on the financial side, again, worked absolutely smoothly. I would also like to say it was again during the crisis. I wouldn't say it was before the crisis. We also came out with a very good thing is tagging the names and tagging the IDs of some critical resources on the VPN, which meant that if they would log into the VPN, they would get priority on the VPN connection versus somebody else. So on an average, we were having around 3,600 people connecting to the VPN, because luckily in our organization, not everything needs to go through VPN. So, we even tag them. So as a result of this, the accounting teams who were doing month close really didn't have so much of lag or did not face challenges that they were getting disconnected or anything from the Oracle system, and things work fine. The second last, which I want to capture on is also that while some teams were working beyond time, that is, the IT, finance, trying to do, the close remotely and so on. I also have the travel team, and suddenly travel has come to literally to 0. We also provide ground transportation, and we've got our own fleet. So we had some activity around that. So the other thing that, I picked up with my team is in such a situation where there are some teams where, of course, the work has reduced, maybe in some places by 25%, maybe in some even by 50%. What else and what more can we do? And that's when we said, let's divert our focus also, or rather pick up the other critical element, which is of operational excellence activities and the just do it improvement projects that is there. So, things like, people used to always say, hey, Bino, I'm too busy with operations, so not really getting time to write an SOP, a detailed screenshot document. I'm not able to really get down to making swim lanes and so on and so forth. So today, some of those teams are actually focusing on that. And they're really looking at, okay, if that, my operations is not really as what it is, can I now sit and concentrate on that? So that was the other thing that we thought and, brainstormed within the team as to what do we also focus on. And of course, the continued attention to automation. Sometimes it's always a struggle, and a change management on automation that has really come to our rescue actually in the finance and various other service lines. This has helped us. And last but not the least is in the middle of all this, the people are the most critical. And how do you keep them motivated and how do you engage with them? So, I generally have regular connects with my leadership team, but beyond that, we actually did our all employee meeting also remotely. So I had more than 100 plus employees logging in and running it as any other session. But the only difference was, physically we would do it as one in one go. When we were doing it remotely, we said, let's break it up into 3 chunks so that people are concentrated, etc. So again, many of those focus group sessions that we are having and so on and so forth.
Just a time check.
Yes, sure. So this is the last that I have which is, with all this that we've put into place, what are we really looking at going forward and how do we really need to align ourselves or readjust for that matter? Firstly is, of course, looking at the strategy of the year in terms of realigning targets. So if we said we're going to do 10, 10 automations or 10 documents or whatever, we are saying, okay, let's realign. Maybe we do only 8 in the year. So that's something that we're consciously looking at. The focus on automation continues because here has been a biggest learning that whenever anything was manual, we've had our impact. So can we focus more and more on automation? And I think the drive for automation will come more. Starting and ensuring that we focus on the critical few rather than doing a whole lot of things. So that's the other thing that is the way I'm looking forward to for the rest of the year and as we move ahead also. And the last but not the least is, it doesn't mean that when the lockdown will get over. And, as many of you must be aware, in Maharashtra, since the situation is quite more extreme than the rest of the country, I don't think we're really going to be getting back to office on 4th of May. Whenever we do get back to office, who is it who really needs to get back to office? It's not that the 100 plus will come back to office on day 1. So we are also looking at which is that most critical function that needs to come in. How do I phase it out? And it may be as good as from the day the lockdown is over, it may be 2 to even 3 months before my entire team may actually be on the floor. And one of the other things that we're looking at is, it could be that there could always be some people working from home, and that whole misnomer that, hey, when you work from home, you don't really work and work doesn't get done. I think a lot of those myths have got over, and I see people have really kind of adjusted and ensuring that their targets are met and things are done. So I think that with that, I will close, and this is what I had to share with everybody. Thanks, Rakesh, and back to you.
Thank you for those insights. I think it was very, very powerful to know the kind of approach you took at the business services. Thanks for that. Really, really very helpful. Of the can you see the results? So the first question. Very interestingly, the respondents are saying the 44% people are saying it's about balancing between critical and not so critical was a challenge in terms of planning to respond for this crisis. And the next one is obviously looking at people engagement and performance monitoring. I think that is something which has been surely a point of conversation by everyone. I think building this too, can I request GV, if you can share your experience of last 4 weeks, how have you built on this? And maybe if you can touch anything on this area, and request you to be quick with your thoughts, please. Thank you, GV. Over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Rakesh, and a very good afternoon to all the leaders and the participants who have joined in. Firstly, I want to probably say, this is an unprecedented, extraordinary situation that we are going through the globe. the entire globe is going through. And I should say that as a fraternity, in terms of IT or ITES, and India constitutes the largest in terms of the fraternity, I think I want to congratulate every one of us, and a big pat on our backs in terms of what we've been able to do, right, in terms of supporting the globe relative to whether it's a GIC, it's a third-party service provider, whomsoever it is, right? I think we should congratulate each other, and we have done the best in terms of what we could do in terms of servicing the globe. With that said, let me kind of jump into Olam Global Business Services and what did we really do here? What were in our experiences? See, Olam is into agribusiness, in terms of food and food ingredients business, in which, in other words, means it's an essential service. So for us, it's been lights on all the time. Even as we speak, our front line is working. Our factories are working. Our traders are working, whether it be the customers or suppliers. And I'm saying working, we're doing all the best to see that we are actually working, because it isn't so easy in terms of this kind of environment that we're able to work, multiple challenges. But being, part of the essential services, that is something that we have taken upon them. And so you have a cascading effect in terms of where it has been lights on with our global business services as well, right? We have kind of spread across more than 60 countries, and the GPS operation is based out of Chennai in Tamil Nadu. We got about 800 plus FTEs supporting more than 35 to 40 countries. And our support is spread across finance, accounting, supply chain, procurement, human resource operations, taxation, risk, almost, a suite of the support that we provide. I think two things that I really wanted to, basically, bring out is being part of the essential services, right? And headquartered in Singapore, right? There were certain advantages that we, picked up. Being in Singapore, right, very close to the epicenter, which is China, right? Though Singapore, as of now, is kind of going through a real spurt in terms of the COVID cases, more to do with their foreign workers, staying in dormitories, but they're kind of effectively managing it. But we were able to get a lot of initial insights and inputs coming in. It was getting cascaded from our corporate office, whether it be in terms of the advisory, the travel advisory, whether it be in terms of the employee safety, whether it be in terms of precautions that we were required to take, whether it be in terms of how do you actually start pushing towards work from home, because some of the early players in terms of this is in terms of what our head office was doing in Singapore. That was way back in Feb, right? In early Feb, right? And they kind of started to go into the work from home, trials. While at GBS, right, we had our first case in India coming up in March, right? But prior to that, we had certain things that we kind of put in place. One was we also had a kind of a self-imposed travel restriction, which both in terms of people coming into GBS and those leaving, right? Especially international travel. So even in the month of Feb, if there were any visitors who were coming in to visit GBS, they had to go through a 14-day quarantine, a self-quarantine before they even hit our offices. We had banned all external travel right from Feb, and whomsoever of our employees who were outside of India were kind of brought back, well in time. Dovetailing in terms of what Singapore was doing, right? In the first week of March, we set up our war room in terms of looking at how we would be moving into managing this situation, right? Because I think in March, we just had the first case reported in India, right? While as we proceeded, things began to increase, and then you had the whole Europe fiasco coming along with US. So with this war room set, the task force to manage this was basically given the first task of identifying those critical resources, which was always there. But critical resources in this kind of a scenario, right, you would normally look at 15 or 20%. But we said, this is not going to work. So we kind of started with about 40% that we said will work from home. So in the first week of March, we had about 40% of our resources which were identified as critical, who then started to work from home, right? there's some kind of rotation that we had put in to manage that. Then in the second week of March, we kind of then bumped it up, and we said that all the resources with laptops, whether it be critical or non-critical, would then work from home. We kind of did it in rotation. Now we had almost covered, 65% of our resources. We were into the third week of March, where we had left with about 35% of our resources who are essentially the desktop users. So we had, two sets of contemplation. So we didn't know how this is going to kind of move into, right? We might move to a lockdown like what China did, or we might move to a partial lockdown. We weren't really clear about what was the scenario that was opening up. So we had two things to contemplate. One is this balanced 35%, right, which probably would constitute about 800 would be about 250 to 300 resources. We said we can look at an option one, which is we make them to rotate, let them come into office 50% for a week, 50% comes in the next week, which means that you are maintaining certain levels of social distancing, and we are only having a certain set of resources coming in. But the risk was that you're going to always have about 15% of your total resources who will not be working at all, right? This was one. The other was just give them laptops. The laptops is also becoming, a hot commodity. You had to really rent out, pretty quick. It had to happen. So we then decided a week before the Janata curfew, right, that we are going to give laptops to all of them. So we in fact procured the required laptops that were needed to supplement those 200, 250 odd people, and then we did all the configuration. We managed to distribute those laptops. Then we had the Janata curfew. We are probably left with about a few 50 to 100 balance that we had to actually do after the Prime Minister announced the lockdown. So we kind of completed the entire task, just on the day, when we were to get into the curfew from that night. So we were then left with about 2% of the resources whom we couldn't give the laptops because they had people who had traveled out of town and couldn't come back. It's about 10 or 15 resources. So 98% of the resources were now set to work from home, right? We had challenges along the way, whether it be in terms of connectivity, right? It was not a hunky-dory, right? Connectivity was a problem. We had people on broadband. We had people who were given dongles, people were given hotspots, but connectivity was an issue and it still continues to be. But for us, two main things that basically we looked on. One is safety of our employees. So even when the employees were brought into the office during those work from home trials, as we were rotating people, we said either people will come in their own transport or we will provide them transport. They will not take public transport. So two things. One was safety of the employees, and the other was the lights have to be kept on because we're part of essential services that we are supporting these 35, 40 odd countries. So with this, everything was working around this. So as we speak, we've got 98% of our resources who are working from home, and we kind of managing, the deliverables. We've not had any service challenges. In fact, for some of the businesses, some of the products, the demand has gone up. For some of them, continue to be the same. For some of them, it has probably, come down. But overall, we don't see any big impact in terms of what we're doing. And being the essential services, right, even the supply chain is in some way getting, managed out globally. And so our support is typically, continuing, I would say 25/7, across the, the countries that we are supporting. So that's the way the last 1 month has been. We have kind of completed 1 month close event successfully. We are into the second month close starting anytime from now. And, weighing the situation that is going to be in Tamil Nadu and Chennai, I think it's going to be, the lockdown would be extended for another couple of weeks, probably till the mid of May. So we're kind of well prepared, for that as well. Now, if you look at way forward, right, this is a paradigm shift in terms of how, we have been working over the last 1 month, almost all of us. It's just not, Olam is an exception out here. But I just want to kind of pick a few things which, I pulled down from McKinsey's survey, which I kind of found it interesting, right? During the lockdown, it was two things. One was the resolve and resilience that really, came to the fore in terms of how we were able to manage. But coming out of the lockdown, right, it is in terms of how are you going to manage this return? What is going to be the staggered approach in managing that, right? What is the reimagining that you need to do, right? Whether it be in terms of continuing the work from home, what kind of proportions that we need to do? how do we better the connectivity challenges? How do we better the infrastructure challenges at home for our employees? How do we kind of improve the constantly improve the engagement if you're going to have people working from home, right? And obviously the 5 areas that you would be focusing on essentially would be in terms of people, process, the structural changes that you will have to bring, the tools that you will have to deploy, and obviously what is going to be a go forward strategy. So that is the way I would put it, Rakesh, in terms of how we have kind of managed it from where we started and where we are today and the way forward.
Yeah, thank you, GV. I think it was, as always, a delight to hear you and hear the way you structured the entire the crisis management, if I can say. And it was fantastic to hear that laptop is becoming a hot commodity. And I could see some of the panelists also having a smile on their face, because that's something which we are really finding it now with the current situation. And sensing it much before Janta curfew was another interesting one. So thanks, GV, and I'm sure there are a few questions just popping up. I'll just come back to some of those questions as we go through hearing one round of the perspectives quickly. And I request the panelists to just keep it quick if it's possible. Just building it ahead, I will request Reena Sharma to share a perspective from a banking financial industry point of view. It is very interesting. Particularly there you talk about sustaining these services. You're supposed to ensure service continuity at the same point of time. I mean, impossible for any industry. It is important for industry information security, but banking financial services, the information security is is like hair, right? So balancing this in this crisis, how were you able to grapple with it? How were you able to manage with it, and so on and so forth? It will be good to hear from you, Reena. Reena, over to you.
Sure. Hi, Rakesh. Hi, everyone. So for us, Rakesh, it was really testing, all the BCP readiness that we have been doing. We have been working so very, closely for all these. Readiness was like the SE test. And, in our bank, like you really said that, information security and coupled with the risk and compliance that the framework that we follow, it's really, really important. And we really cannot go to all the modern apps and, we cannot take, we cannot take advantage of the latest technology in market unless and until it has been fully tested and there are no info leaks which have been reported. So we are always a few steps behind in a bank, I would say. And, it is a limitation in some aspects, but to us, it really turned out to be our advantage in this kind of a crisis scenario. Because all the BCP readiness that we have been doing, and we do it pretty thoroughly in our bank, follow a BYOD approach. So we do not give away laptops, or we do not give away other, kind of technical infrastructure. But we have been testing, we work on enablement. Anywhere, any kind of a system, we call it A3. And that keeps on testing, people that they can remotely log in through your personal devices. And we do a full testing. Now, when the crisis had happened, just to keep it short, we had done our BCP testing, in December, and we have kind of reported everything. But when the crisis actually happened, and when we started getting this news around, I would say starting of March, or mid-Feb was the kind of time we were looking at it, because we do have branches in China and we were seeing the impact of the COVID situation out there. So we started preparing much in advance. Like both my other friends, like they have said that it was the advanced preparation which was really key. So what we did in our case, what proved to be a success for us was not only did we look at that, okay, who all can work from home or what are the numbers looking like, etc. But I went a step ahead and I did a full load testing. So what I was only skeptical about was that when we all work from home, how strongly will the network hold it? So that was for a small, there were some, inputs for us coming out of that, that we had certain challenges on Citrix, or we had certain challenges on certain apps. So which we flagged off with our IT colleagues much in advance. And then we started preparing our list of, phase one and phase two, that how will we have a 50-50 split, wherein I am part of, that we all will work from home, for a certain period of, let's say, a 1 week or a 2 week. And by rotation, we will have then the other second half work from home. Unfortunately, in between, we had the lockdown situation when our phase one was coming to an end. So all of us had to go, on the work from home, which I would say was a acid test, in that scenario. And I'm so glad to say that all our month-end close, quarter-end close have gone phenomenally well. Some things which were the key enablers for us was the speed with which IT responded. Like our bank had been, like I said, that we have been on BYOD, on automation everywhere, IT access to everyone for a very long time. So all these investment that the bank had been making right from, few years before this crisis, that really helped us. And after that, with the speed with which our group technology teams responded, and within few days or few weeks, we had additional servers bought in. We had an additional server space in another country nearby in APAC. Unfortunately, for the sake of confidentiality, I cannot disclose greater details to it. And then, Skype is the key channel for us for communication. Immediately, a few more Skype lines in India were procured. We had thousands and thousands of calls, to the IT help desk, and the queue was coming so long. Immediately, within few days, our IT colleagues came up with a self-help portal kind of things, to take away the load from the people. I would say that putting an in India, for my unit, we are 100% working from home. And it is, I would say if I take the technology and the other teams also, we are upwards of about 90 and 99% for sure. And that is a good about 12,000 employees overall in India. Globally, again, we are 98% work from home. Currently, everybody is working from home. So, and in a banking scenario, you would see that all the volatility that has been there of markets. So overnight, our volume people have shown, and that is where we say that, human resources are actually human assets or capital that we have. And the great collaboration that was shown, that has enabled our bank to be ahead, and we have got very good quarter one results as well. I think that is probably some of the things I would like to share. The way this world is changing all around us, it is not only on, how we are playing in our professional sphere. So couple of initiatives that, I've launched because I'm heading, some of the people committee initiatives in my organization. So immediately, within few weeks, I think second or third week, we came up with staying connected. And we have got things like, very small little initiatives, like we have a Monday gratitude, wherein we go ahead and we appreciate our people, who have walked an extra mile, or, it can be a peer-to-peer, it could be across teams. If somebody has helped me in, let's say, a a group technology team or a group facilities team, I can go ahead and appreciate them. So that is a way, like we say that we are turning Monday blues into Monday gratitude or Monday thank yous. Then we have got Friday trivia, where we open few quizzes for our people. and they can take those quizzes. We are encouraging people to show their work from home avatar where they share a picture and along with their I would say some slogans. Then we are unleashing talent. We are asking them that now, since you have got this time added back to you, the travel time, how are you utilizing it? And people share their very interesting pictures where they are working with their kids on some projects, or teaching them some art and craft, or there's somebody cooking, and a lot of mail entries on cooking, which is really really good to and they show their pictures and they send it to us. So that is on unleashing talent. Then we also have got the fitness. We should not forget now, since we cannot hit a gym or a swimming pool, or we cannot go for our runs. So people are simply sharing their yoga practices, or some of the stretching exercises, healthy food habits. So that is how we are staying connected, and we have got very, very good response from our employees on these initiatives. And these are run weekly. I think I'll take a pause, Rakesh, if you have any other questions.
No, I think, Reena, thanks for that. And I think this Monday blues to Monday gratitude and the Friday, I think it's fantastic. And I could see some chat comments as well coming in by saying great move. So it's very interesting to note that. I think there's a lot of WhatsApp memes and jokes these days about work from home and work at home, with everybody doing daily chores and managing things and so on and so forth. It's very powerful to keep that energy level high, and I think excellent, Reena. Thanks for that, sharing that perspective. I'll get back to you with one or two questions. One comment I think which has come, and one question which has come, and somebody responded very very nicely though, is the industry is going to see interestingly a boom. I'm talking about business services industry. So the GICs, the global centers, there will be a lot of sensitivity. There'll be a lot of anxiety. There'll be a lot of challenges now for the next few weeks, because the parent is facing that challenge, and hence there will be an impact to the GICs and GBS. And surely over a period of time, they'll be able to rebuild and bounce back very closely. And there's a question on the V-shape and the U-shape recovery. I will just park that question, and maybe I'll request Karthik, if you can share your experience at Bharti Airtel. I think I'm on the Airtel broadband, by the way, and thanks for some of the telecom infrastructure, which is still keeping us connected and engaged. So Karthik, over to you for hearing some of your experiences of how well you guys responded to this crisis and some tips for us.
Thank you, Rakesh. It's been great to connect to this forum in this current crucial times. To start with, probably not many will know that Airtel has its own shared services. So I'll just take a couple of seconds to introduce us. So we have been having a shared services. We started our activities sometime back in 2009-10. That's when the shared services in Airtel started. So we call ourselves as ACE, Airtel Center of Excellence. We cover activities for India, Sri Lanka, and another 15 countries in Africa. So it covers all activities starting from finance, starting from revenue recording to accounts payable to fixed assets to procure to pay. Then we have our customer accounting, because telecom being a monthly transaction scenario. Then taxation activities, which is for India and for Africa to a large extent. And also we have the internal governance on financial activities. So all these things lie with the shared services of Airtel. So we have 3 center of operations, one in Gurgaon, one in Chennai, and one in Bangalore, roughly covering about 1,000 odd people, catering to requirements of all these countries. So like what we said, telecom being one of the essential services, the importance of the financial processes being online always was very important. One, from aspect of keeping the cash flowing into the market when our vendors are supplying or maintaining the networks, and ensuring The entire country gets connectivity because roughly around 300 odd million customers are using our network. And this time, crucial time of lockdown, ensuring network connectivity always on was a very important thing. And to keep that running, the backend operations have to be running. Either it is payment to the vendors, whether it is processing of vendor bills, whether it is revenue recording, or whether it is making sure that all the vendor queries are sorted out on time. So that's how it's important from our perspective. Getting into the topic, how we started this activity is, yes, we were keenly watching what is happening around the globe, and we have a well-defined BCP documents which we are using since we are in the essential services. Not only for network, it is for IT, network, finance, all those activities were there. So we started our preparation by March, 4th of March. There was the actual date in which we sent out our preparation documents. Like my industry colleagues explained earlier, we all went through vertical by vertical and identified the issues that might come up. While documentation is there, but practical deployment will come up with some new issues. And to check the effectiveness of what we have understood and how prepared we are, we actually went for a two slotted arrangement wherein roughly around 400 people were working from home for a day and then came back with what kind of issues were they facing. This was much before, this was roughly 2 weeks before even the lockdown started. It gave us sufficient time to note down what all the issues we are being faced, where are the connectivity problems are coming up, where dongles have to be distributed, because not everyone is fortunate enough to have a broadband at home because of the demographic distribution. How we could arrange for that, those things were done. In parallel, we also contacted our third-party vendors who are supplying some of the activities for us, the activity outsourcing part of the job. So there again, we keenly participated in how we ensure they are able to provide the service to us on a continuous basis. So we arranged for laptops, dongles, and in many cases where laptops were not available with the third party, we even helped them to move their desktops to their employee locations. So that our objective was to ensure everyone is logged in and the services doesn't get disrupted. So that helped us a lot to come out of the crisis. Even when everything was prepared well up front, still the first 2 days of lockdown, we had to go through all the difficulties to understand everybody is connected, how to track them, how to ensure that if anybody is facing a difficulty, how do we reach out to them. All those things were taken up. Then employee welfare and health issues were also taken up as a continual program. So that's how we managed to get into the lockdown without much of a struggle. So by the second day of the lockdown, when it was announced and we started working from home compulsorily, 98% of all our employees were able to log in without a problem on that week. So that helped us a lot. Coming into what are the challenges we faced subsequently and what kind of actions we took up, a few areas where we have challenges while we are in telecom, but connectivity is still an issue. While we can prioritize, we ensured SIMs and dongles was distributed to everyone whosoever didn't have broadband at home. That was one issue. And while most it has been sorted out, but still there are a few packets where we are still continuing to have problems. The reason for mentioning this is having a negative impact on the productivity. If somebody is doing 100 activities a day, 100 steps a day, probably now it has dropped down to 70 or 80. Now, there has to be realignment of the load and to ensure that we don't drop any activity. Data security is another aspect which we were looking in. Being in telecom, being governed by very strict rules and regulations by the government on the security of the data, whether it is customer related or whether it is transactions related to customers. We had to be very, very careful on that. So we ensured virtual desktops were available to everyone and VPN based access controls we were able to do. And for the virtual desktops, considering say data security, fortunately we have moved into virtual desktop scenarios roughly 3 years back. So that helped us a lot to ensure connectivities without data loss. The other factor what we went through as a learning, probably never done before in the history of Airtel or probably many of the other companies, is we have our annual closure, which is the accounts closure for both India and the 15 countries in Africa. So all that doing remote coordination with auditors, both in India, and since Africa entities are UK listed, coordinating with the UK auditors, the time zone differences and everything. So that has proved a bit difficult in the first week of April. Then people geared up and we were ready to do it. This is from a delivery aspects. From engagement of employees, to ensure that everyone is available as per the schedules and timelines. We took up internally, we have a leadership team within our shared services, so we took up internally how we will keep them motivated and engaged. One item what we understood well early into the thing is, beyond a point, too much of engagement also is counterproductive. Because the environment in which people are sitting and working, probably not everyone is fortunate enough to have a separate room or a non-disturbed environment. Probably kids are running around, they don't have a separate space to sit out and take the calls without any disturbance. So considering all these factors, then we got into a time slot way of dealing with people. So this helped to ease out the nerves of many of the employees. Because when you get a call from bosses asking for deliveries and things like that, the environmental disturbances also creates a loss of stress. So there we said, okay, we will take it into a slightly different way of handling it. And we also initiated a weekly communications. When we say weekly communications, it's one, we had Zoom calls, Zoom conference calls with all the skip levels and things like that. Then we also ensured each of the leader, each of the vertical head will reach out to the skip level on a one-on-one basis, and they will do it in a rotation. So it's just a phone call. You don't even need to do a Skype call or anything. Just to call up people and say, how are you doing? And what is happening at your place? So that's one area which has helped us to keep the engagement levels high and also manage these audit issues. A few of the learnings what we have picked up from here are about the extensive use of the communication tools. Because when you are working in a shop floor, it's more to do with you walk across to people, get things done, you barge in to meetings, you do it. But when you work from a home and you have everyone is connected online, how the etiquettes of communication will happen, how the time respect will happen. Because everyone has deliveries, everyone has a work pressure, and everyone also has the problem of managing their household items. Because even getting vegetables to arranging food to arranging milk to everything, probably they need to have time slots, they need to go when the vendor is coming. So all those things are there. So how do we ensure we respect each other's time and at the same time stay connected and manage them? That's one. Delivery management was slightly a different approach which we took. While there are milestones, where broad milestones were available, we broke it into much smaller milestones. So that gave us an opportunity to catch up with people and at the same time understand who is lagging behind or who is having a problem in the delivery. Then can we step in? Can we ask any other guy to pick up some of the activities to reduce the load? Because the main objective was we need to cross the line as a team. Now, there's no point in saying some guy is delivering or some guy is not delivering. But end of the day, we need to ensure the entire delivery happens and the audit and statutory audit timelines are met. One more thing what we picked up is many of the people, apart from the peak delivery times of monthly closing and other activities, had some time in their hand. Like Reena was also talking about the travel time, which was now free or which is now available for people if they want to use their time effectively. We also introduced free online courses in collaboration with Coursera and our own internal learning team, HBR. So we brought this out and rolled it out to all the people. So we said, whosoever is interested, depending on what level you are in, what kind of courses are available for you. And all these courses and certifications were made free starting from April. So that also keeps an engagement level. So people don't feel that they are sitting at home only working on the systems and they are not getting to meet people. But then when your mind gets diverted into self-learning, and certification, then it helps a lot to keep them engaged. So all said and done, while we have captured major of the activities here, the undenying fact is the work ways have changed. Now, when we assess it, when we start implementing the change in the processes, when we decide, saying if we could have managed 40 days, 60 days, 90 days without doing a particular activity, which we have been doing it for last many years, now how do we change our processes? So that's a big transformation which I believe most of the organizations will go through. And we are also spending our time on getting up to see once the lockdown gets over, like one of the participants here put up, TCS is saying 70% of their people will work from home. Now that will be a reality in many of the companies. So how do we gear up for it, and how do we redesign our processes and things? So those are the things which as a team, as a leadership team, we have been engaging ourselves with. So this is broadly what I wanted to share. So finally, to say that this 60 to 45 days has given us the confidence. Even if anything unprecedented happens, we will be able to keep the ship running. So that's the confidence which we have got as of now. So that's it from my side.
Thank you, Karthik. I think some interesting stories you talked about. I think just taking a 30-second on a story, you mentioned about the kids running around and they were not able to take the calls, etc. And I was talking with a very large service provider and one of the CXO leader of that service provider. He said, okay, you know what, we responded to the crisis so well that within 6 hours, the crisis management team ensured that each of the frontline associate was having a desktop at their place or a laptop at their place, and they were able to connect, etc., etc. But as we started doing that, we realized that some of our associate level or team member level people stay in PGs, stay in rented accommodations in small gullies where reaching through a car, a desktop is very difficult. So they took the computer on a bike and then they installed there. And as they were installing it there, they realized that this guy was leaving along with 2 other roommates. And the 3 from interesting. I take this opportunity quickly, and I'll just take 30 seconds for here it goes. As I request, if you select which is most relevant, max. I'm now even scan out, so I'll give to the panel. So poll is launched. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. So here is the poll for all of you. Can you see that? I'm still expecting a lot of people to vote for it. As we continue with the polling, I will request now Rahul to share insights on emotional intelligence and emotional quotient, because that is which is important to drive any change, because there are we are talking about a lot of change program, transformation program, etc. But finally, it's at the end of the day, it is human which really respond to it. So I request Rahul, if you can share some thoughts around that and also some snippets from your global survey, Rahul. So over to you, Rahul.
Yep. Thank you,
Rahul,
Rakesh.
you're on mute.
Yeah, I just unmuted. Am I audible?
Yes, Rahul.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you. So thank you, Rakesh. I think you put it very well. Also wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for having me over to talk about a very interesting piece. I'm not just going to talk about emotional intelligence, but a little about things related to what we are already seeing happen in across the world during these challenging times. So as others, other speakers have already shared some of their experiences as to how companies are transforming, what is currently happening. I think the core essence of what is currently taking place, and as like you rightly pointed out, is with the human factor. Humans are playing a very, very important part in terms of not just doing what is currently happening, but even looking at what will happen in the near future. I think we are at the epicenter of where the human interface will probably change and be much more larger in terms of what it is currently doing. Just as a quick just as a quick point of view, I wanted to put forth that a couple of years back, ACC had done some research on the future of professional accountancy, and over there, we through that piece of research, we developed 7 professional quotients. So when I actually looked at what is currently happening across the market, across the globe rather, I we really see 3 key pointers from that professional quotients coming out. First is obviously the immediate need for having emotional intelligence, being able to manage people, being able to manage your own self. So emotional intelligence is now becoming a must have rather than just a good to have. So that is becoming more and more important. I think everyone is talking about digital. Look at the way that we are currently working. We are all digitally enabled. So companies which are now which had a 5-year transformation program, digital transformation program, it has suddenly come down to a 5-month transformation program or even lesser. So I think digital is here to stay as an enabler for us to be able to connect via Zoom, to be able to have this conversation. But more importantly, what remains at the center is the kind of skills that are required, is the kind of competencies that are required, and how those will probably change in the near future, where technical remains at the core center of what is technical skills will remain at the center of what is really required. So just sharing a little from some of the pieces of research that we have done. So I spoke about emotional intelligence. I think increasingly as technology will lead the future, and for businesses, the sustainable advantage will not come by trying to replicate tasks or maybe compete with machines. I think it is more likely to come by leveraging the competitive advantages inherent in our own self, which is human. And this is where it is fundamental to look at what is the impact that we as humans are creating in a digital age, and the emotions or the emotions we are going to have as a human being. Um, and it is important for us to maybe look at what people really want, and what is the kind of culture that you want to develop in your organizations, which is more from a fact of, like I rightly and like it is mentioned over here, growth mindset. It is really pushing people to get out of their comfort zone and start exploring other areas of where is it that they can extend their capabilities to, where is it that they can start looking at people in a more compassionate way. So there is some interesting research that we've done around it. And again, if you look at the screen, people who are very, very curious to learn about new things but do not understand, people who are working part-time or maybe full-time, the drive for them to be able to succeed and work harder are some of the real things that are coming through the research that we have. And on several of the competency elements that we look through as a part of the research, the study actually shows that the more the experience, the higher the experience among people, it is more aligned towards their curiosity to learn, the curiosity to move ahead and explore and push themselves out of their comfort zones. And that is what is really coming through the research. So having spoken about the human element, let me now dive a little into the digital aspect of it. Now, the digital piece is something where we all know that digital transformation is something that each and every industry company across the world is investing in, just to make lives easier, just to make the connectivity easier. Some of our research actually also shows that 70% of the organizations either actually have a strategy in place or are actually working on it, and most of the companies have actually already undergone a transformation to create newer business models, which is pretty obvious. There are a lot of new business models around when you come to look at how digital is enabling businesses. So having said that, what does this really mean? To be able to develop your own digital quotient as a person, keeping again yourself at the forefront. I think understanding that this current generation, and correlating it with digitization, is something that we need to be a part of. It is going to be there. It will definitely be something where we have to be a part of it, and we need to appreciate the mindset. It is not just the application. It is more around the organization's future that are built around these agile cultures, right? And then you have to look at how we are collaboratively working. We have now connected digitally to colleagues across the world more than ever before. Just as an example, I think all of you would agree that the productivity of some of our teams have actually gone up by at least 15 to 20%, because we are now more available in a way. We are more accessible in a way because we are digitally connected. This also means that we need to appreciate the changes in the business model that we are a part of. We need to manage the impact of whatever is going on in terms of a change, manage the impact not just on ourselves but also on others, and be conscious of that. And then at the same point of time, use technology, use business technology to be able to keep driving the force of what we need to do. I think data integrity, everyone is pretty much aware of the use of data nowadays, and recognize the inherent skills that are required, not just to be able to deliver data, but also to use data and how to deliver it from a perspective of driving integrity. And at the same point of time, when we talk about data, we cannot forget about being ethical in today's age, where digital is being used so much, that being able to use data and while working from home is more of an ethical component that we need to look at, and how it can be transformed within organizations. And from a practical application standpoint, take a considered view of how the emerging technologies, mindful of the practical applications, often leave behind an initial enthusiasm, but may well have a long-lasting impact. So, we keep hearing every other day some new technologies coming to the fore, but we also keep looking at how some of the older technologies are now becoming more redundant. So I think it is also a way of us to probably detox ourselves in a way to take a step back and look at ways of how to keep evolving ourselves in terms of what is it that we want to do with respect to businesses, with respect to people, with respect to evolving business models. Now, this is where a little bit of a deep dive into, or I would probably touch upon the aspect of careers and skills. Very recently, in fact, we did a piece of research. We looked at, what are the future of careers looking like, specifically because we come from a finance and accountancy. I come from a finance and accountancy professional body, so we focus on the area of finance and accountancy. So I think what we really were able to identify is that there are 20 trends that are shaping the work for accountants, and therefore newer careers would be formed in the near future. But we also realize that these trends are ranging from possibilities of what data is able to offer, which will probably then become the central to roles and linked to the adoption of automation technologies. It may also mean that it will free up the time of some of the professional accountants to actually start looking at added value that they want to be able to create and be able to deliver to the businesses. Provide greater connectivity, highlighting the rising importance of inclusivity at workplace, the changing nature of work, and the evolving business models. These are some of the critical elements which we see taking place in businesses and careers going forward. So it's very easy to kind of group some of these trends into 4 areas. But just for the purpose of this discussion, or just from a purpose of sharing some of the ideas that we have over here, we've actually divided or further identified 5 zones of career opportunities that we see will extend over the next decade, and will be directly linked to business sustainability. So we are not going to you know deep dive into this right now because obviously of time consciousness, but just from a perspective that these zones are really representing the opportunities that businesses have, the opportunities that individuals have, more importantly, to be able to develop their own careers, to be able to make an impact in more than one of these zones of opportunity as they go along in the careers. So what we envisage as a future world of career transformation, where many individuals will have different type of roles during their work life, but building more variable career paths rather than necessarily climbing the traditional vertical career ladder. So that will also mean that you'll probably see the rise of the importance of some, the gig economy again, with so much of emphasis on career skills and varied career skills that are being looked at. So that's really what I wanted to share, slightly different from what other speakers have been sharing, but just a point of view of what is currently happening across the world as we see through our research. Thank you, and back to you, Rakesh.
Thanks, Rahul. As you rightly said, it was different, and that's why it was interesting, because we were all talking about one kind of responding to the crisis. It's also about connecting with the change, the entire change, and how the this emotional intelligence and many evolving roles becomes important as we go ahead. With this, I know we are just running behind time by a little bit, but I just also want to share the results of the poll quickly. And then I'll request Sanjay to share something very different about life and life after COVID-19 is very important. So sharing the results with all of us. The second poll says that, have I shared the results of the first poll yet? Okay, one second. I have to share the results of the poll too, sorry. Yeah. As the second poll, the flexible working hours seems to be one of the major elements of engagement. People believe is post-lockdown, it's going to be one of the major elements. And obviously, besides flexible work hours, it's also about empowering them to plan their work plan, etc. I think I'm told I just dropped off at the point when I was sharing about that story of when the people entered the house to install the desktop for one of the BPO or ITO companies. They had 2 more friends in the room, and they had 2 more people from 2 different companies. And all 3 of them were working for 3 different IT BPO companies, 3 different customers, and hence, the whole concept of GDPR confidentiality was interestingly, has to be looked at with the Indian infrastructure, as even Karthik was talking about. So Sanjay, over to you with it's all about life after COVID-19. How we will be living after COVID-19, Sanjay.
Thanks, Rakesh. And it's not just about how we will be doing this afterwards, but during all of it, Rakesh, because COVID as an ailment is not going anywhere, it's likely to become a part of our lives, though the importance will come down substantially once the prevention and cure is discovered. It'll be just like flu, or a slightly more dangerous version of flu. But yeah, so there will be a lot of changes that may be required in the way we carry out our work and our daily lives. The one factor that is very important for us to understand is that this lockdown has actually advanced a lot of technology development that was happening in any case. in the industry and in the world, where developments were happening about how to expand networks without compromising on security and all that. And all of that has suddenly been brought to the fore, and the importance has increased substantially. So, but nothing is really new, as we heard so many speakers talk about, how they've been very quickly able to get over some of their issues. So I'll just take some time and take you through some points. What this is going to be doing to us, this new normal, as it is very commonly called, is trying to build self-sufficiency into every unique group or individual or an entity. So if that entity is an individual, it's a person, we see that self-sufficiency has become norm. And the same is true for businesses, etc. So everything which is true for individuals is likely to be true for the business as well, which we will just see. The next 2 years are likely to be a little chaotic because a lot of things need to come online and streamline themselves before it becomes a part of our normal, regular routine. So Ludo. Not many people would have played the game of Ludo for many, many years after they've been out of their initial primary schools. But suddenly all the Ludos are probably out. The rules of Ludo all forgotten. They are being downloaded from the internet. They are looked at. Basically trying to assess yourself and say, you have to stay indoors or in confined spaces for some period of time. And if people like me who are intellectually challenged, we play Ludo, but there are a lot of more intellectual people who play more entertaining games like chess and bridge and other things, but they still continue to download the rules. Basically, it's a stay at home kind of a thing, and or stay in a confined space and become independent. So those processes which require a lot of interlinkages also have to start thinking about how much of it can become more self-dependent. What are the things that need to be done which I can do myself without having to unnecessarily go to another place? Those processes where the maximum activity can be done by one single individual or at least one single group will become more important and become more prominent. And that's what I mean by saying it will become a little more individualistic, close to the person, both your life in your personal capacity as well as in business. The second is about how often will you travel. Today, our cars are stranded on the roadside or in garages, and for days they don't, you don't switch them on. And sooner or later, either you will change the batteries or you'll certainly charge them, with the result that you may do well to actually invest in Exide shares or Amaron shares or whatever else. The essence here being that the general mobility of the country will actually come down. There will be a lot of working from defined spaces, fewer people going out, fewer people venturing onto the streets, fewer people venturing onto offices. And the large luxurious cars and luxurious entertainment stuff that we were doing up till now, going to theaters, all of that is now over. Business is also going to be facing some of that changes. The importance of necessities will increase. Necessities in such cases are, obviously things like what you may need for sustenance in life as well as in business. While having managed to go to business, the 6 feet rule will become important. Socially, it means that marriages or parties or midnight dinners or going to bars, etc., are going to have a very different feel. Actually, so are things like office work. So are things like businesses. So are things like team building exercises. Or any such events that you think, even having 2 or 3 or 4 people having lunch together in office canteens, that's going to make a difference. It's going to change. You cannot be sitting next to each other with shoulders against each other and sharing each other's lunch. That might become extremely difficult, and so therefore those rules are likely to change a little bit. In order to cater to that, there will be change. There will be change in legislation, there will be change in company policy. flexible working, we've spoken a lot about flexible working hours, but we do not have policies around flexible working hours robust enough. Some of the companies may have, but many don't. What about the other things like leave, for instance, or attendance, for instance? It's going to become a little difficult for you to take care of such routine matters. The importance of adhering to a particular timeline will go away. And so there has to be other ways. What about sick leave? What if I'm unwell, can I just take the day off without anybody getting to know of it, etc.? Nobody will really understand or know. So, those things are going to become important. Attire, for example, will lose its meaning. As it is a very loose attire policy now, companies are changing that. But it will certainly become more important to have a very, very flexible attire policy. However, if you're in office, there has to be a decorum, which a new kind of attire policy might actually come into place. Say gloves become important, or face masks become important, or other kind of thing. You have to completely wash your hands every time, or maybe after every period of time, etc., etc. So those things will become a part of your policy. And not many people have really understood that going back to work, even in minor numbers, might mean a very different office as we've seen till now. An important aspect, for example, is no biometric. Now, even if companies who were technology very advanced, all they had to do was show their thumb onto the biometric, but the thumb is extremely dangerous now, because that probably has a lot of virus attached to it. So things like all of that is likely to go haywire. Amazing holiday. I was talking about difference in what it means is that this is really called for the unexpected. There will be lots and lots of unexpected changes that might happen in our world. For example, going to a holiday. Now, if you're planning a 15-day holiday to Switzerland, I think you should take about 45 days privilege leave before you do that. Because for all you know, once you land in Switzerland, they may put you on a 15-day quarantine. And once you come back to India, you'll certainly go on a 15-day quarantine. So your 15-day vacation in Switzerland has suddenly become a 45 days. And if you haven't planned for it, then you're going to be in trouble. And that's what I mean in business as well. Unexpected will hit you. And unexpected readiness is not necessarily very easy, but it's likely to happen. And that's an important aspect for us to remember. This is not bread and breakfast. It's bulls and bears. The volatility of the financial world has already hit us big time. And this is likely to continue. The new bulls and bears are likely to be prancing around the streets very, very often and very much in common. And so all our decision making in terms of finances, etc., are not going to be very easy. They will all have to be taken care of in context of where we currently are and what kind of risk appetite we take. Now, in the next more than 2 years or so, approximately, certain things will settle down. So I'll just quickly take you through some of these, in my opinion. One is this, what I call the luxury paradox. Now, luxury paradox is basically about while the luxuries are going to go away and there may be no need for us to keep our investments in jewelry or in a Mercedes or whatever, etc. But there is one or a few element of luxuries that will actually become more important. Gold, for example. A lot of people will move a substantial part of their funds or their savings into something that historically we have felt, at least as Indians, that gold is the most valuable investment. So up till now, very small percentage of our investment portfolio was dedicated to it. I think that that's going to increase. From a company point of view, from an organization point of view, what is gold for an organization? I think capabilities and innovativeness of individuals is the gold. And so there will be a lot of effort in building capabilities, in improving innovativeness, etc. And a lot of value will also be attached to these goals that individuals will be able to muster and demonstrate. The 6 feet can only come down to 1 yard. The 6 feet will never come down to 0. So that important personal space will continue to remain important, and you will have to deal with this, which means possibly buying your own car, going and commuting on things other than metros, etc., where this 1 yard is not possible. Content not only from an entertainment point of view, but the content of what you give or what you demonstrate to your customer is important. The importance of content and importance of substance over form is the mantra now. Going ahead, we'll have to handle this extremely carefully. And sales pitches, etc., are gone. So the sales content is the only thing which is likely to help us. No more. Rahul spoke about learning methodologies, etc. That's going to become very important. More and more innovative learning methodologies, flexibility in learning, ability to unlearn, ability to learn. That, from a point of view of an individual, is going to be an extremely important aspect. Polarization. I believe this is very important. We are already seeing it. Polarization is to do with improved sense or increased sense of maybe anxiety, of racism, of nationalism, and so many other contradictions, conspiracies, for example, on one end. On the other end, it also is an opportunity which we've seen in millions of people, where the goodness of these people have actually come out, who've never really had an opportunity to help and support. So a lot of that is likely to come out as well. And finally, healthcare. I think healthcare is going to be very important. There's going to be an advancement in healthcare. People of all types will be covered, more and more advancement. More villages, for example, will start getting covered in a big way, and public health system is likely to become a very prominent talk of the town. Finally, I think the whole thing is about how well can we emotionally handle the situation. The more important and more standard your emotional understanding is, it's likely to pull you very much in all directions. And the intelligence that you can build can only take you up till a certain level. Thereafter, the ultimate numbers game or the ultimate goal that you will have to achieve can only be brought through if you can increase and improve your emotional quotient. So those are my some views, Rakesh, and back to you. I can take questions on any of them at any time.
Yeah. Thanks, Sanjay. I think, as I keep saying, when you talk about 6 feet distance, it's about being safer or be sorry. So either 6 feet distance or 6 feet under. And any which ways, we are not promoting shares of any battery company. So, but it's bound to go up, and we obviously need to check for the car batteries. I think now I'll put everybody on the panel on the gallery view quickly. I'm also launching a poll now. This is for the panelists as well. This poll will be there. You guys can just quickly, this is the last poll of the day or for this session. A couple of interesting questions, and let's request literally rapid fire, quick 30 seconds kind of responses from each one of you. I think a lot of these questions in the Q&A box has been responded by our panelists. If you guys still have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us over an email, and we will try to get back with the responses to you for sure. But there are a couple of quick, interesting questions just come up, and I'll request my panelists to be absolutely rapid fire in terms of responding to it. Question for you, Sanjay. The question is the relationship, for some of the, we feel the relationships were created, formed, built over tea, smoke, a chat. Is it possible to form such bonds in a digital environment?
Well, it's very unlikely for you to be sharing a cup of tea or even a smoke digitally. And for the same reason, it is very difficult for you to be actually trading germs digitally. So at the risk of protecting ourselves from trading germs, I'll actually refrain from trading cup of tea as well as smokes, and therefore sacrifice on the bonds. However, what I'm saying is that this is not likely to be a forever feature. the forever feature doesn't, if this ailment is there, yes, I agree. And the recency effect will remain, and it should. But that does not mean that this is like, life has been completely suspended. Over a period of time, we will all come back to, regular bonding and bonhamming and, beer together kind of stuff.
GV, a quick question to you. Thanks, Sanjay. I think it was very, very nicely articulated. GV, a quick question to you. How do you see this impact resulting into anything to the structuring models? Maybe it is a captive or an outsourcing. Do you see there's an impact which is on the structuring model because of this change? And particularly, just to build up a second part of the question, is because a lot of nationalist point will come up, because as you rightly said, a lot of all these countries in the Western world or any part of the globe, they'll be thinking about job losses. They'll be thinking about how to first look for the employment onshore and so on and so forth. So just connect this to a quick answer from you, GB.
Probably I will look at it from our context, the context of in our organization itself. I think the next 2 quarters, this is going to be globally prevalent, is you probably will not see any new work coming through. There's going to be a certain level of sensitivity and emotional quotient that's going to be attached specifically from the Western world, right? Where the unemployment are kind of reaching record levels, right? So I think the focus in terms of the next 2 quarters is to how to engage with their own people within their countries, right? And how do we kind of ensure that there's some kind of income which is coming to them, right? There is there's kind of an analogy that I believe is the desperation which has got created in the Western world, right, might make those people more in terms of these unemployed people to be picking up jobs at a severe undercutting of their salaries. Today, if you're looking at somebody paying $50,000, and he might come for a job at probably $25,000, $30,000. So that's going to create a bit of a stress, but that's going to be more temporary, because then what happens is the offshoring arbitrage potential may take a beating. So we're going to see some of these developments coming, but it's all till you have a vaccine in place. Probably I believe the next 2 quarters, we'll have to wait and watch in terms of how things pan out. But beyond that, I think things will return back to normalcy. Right? The max I can see is about 2 to 3 quarters, beyond which it'll come back to normalcy. And especially with the work from home concept that will pick up, there is more potential in terms of what we'll be able to deliver at lower costs, from a country like ours.
Right. Thanks, JV. Binu, quick question to you. Do you plan to go back to office after lockdown?
I would say yes and no. No hurry to get back, because work is going perfectly fine remotely, both by self or the team. But yes, from a point of view that, yes, there are some critical things. And, to the point of that team, the feeling of a team together, that feeling of being as one together. For sure, we are humans and we do need that connect. So I think even seeing people face to face in person makes a difference. So yeah, when everything is safe, I would love to go to office more to actually see my teams and feel back together as one. Yeah.
Thanks, Binu. I think as we rightly said, it's all about being human and making sure those coffee breaks sometimes are very important, even though how digital we get into. And that brings to an interesting question to you, Karthik. I think not officially from your organization point of view, but where the people are asking questions by saying, when is 5G is coming? And if there's no 5G, you have a best of the network so far. I think we all had a bit of a trip. Your network was the best. Is it because of your network is different? Or, so the question is about telecom infrastructure, how it is critical to look at the telecom infrastructure to make all this, whatever we are trying to make it happen. You're on mute, Karthik.
From a telecom infrastructure perspective, yes, we play a very crucial role. But to say the current way the infrastructure has been built was never anticipated in a way the demand will come from the different packets. Because the peak demand, non-peak hours demand were all designed depending on commercial, industrial establishment and the place in which the concentration of usage happens. The amount of usage from home was not expected to be so high. So the capacity structuring and everything was slightly different. And that's where the investments were also happening. Now, this last 45 days has thrown open many packets where we are working heavily on software optimization so that with the same existing capacity, more throughputs and more uninterrupted services can be enabled. Having said that, a continuous work from home, are we ready for the infrastructure? Probably no. Probably in the tier 1 cities to a large extent, yes, but once you start moving out of it, the wired connectivity plays a lot in having an uninterrupted service and connectivity. That's a bit low in India per se. And coming to 5G, in the current environment and the stress the industry is going through, while in the current environment of COVID, telecom becomes an essential service, and yes, we are not as much impacted as any other industry because connectivity is a must for everyone, so people are using the services. But slowly it will catch up, right? Beyond a point, whatever impact comes in the economy will trickle down to all industries, irrespective of where we are sitting in now. And as most of the panelists here will know, with the government way of handling license fees and other charges that they collect from all these partners, from all the operators, the industry is in stress.
Yeah.
So whether it is Airtel or whether you take Jio or whether you take Voda Idea, only the 3 players worth standing. BSNL is anyway supporting everyone. All are under stress. So will 5G come up now, or if it comes up, will anyone pay for it? Or if the government gives it free, will we be able to deploy it? These are 3 different scenarios broadly.
Sure.
If the government gives it free, probably few of the operators out of the 3 can go ahead and enable their systems for using 5G. Having said that, less than 3 to 4% of the top users in India will be having a 5G enabled phone, because that is also one of the main thing as of now. Yeah. So 5G is anyway a distant dream of 24 to 36 months away. So it's not now and today.
Thanks, Karthik. Thank you. I think I was just trying to take advantage of asking that question with little pun intended. So thanks for responding with a lot of seriousness to it. So nice of you. Quickly, GV, would you go back to your headquarters? You have been always traveling. What will happen to that? How will you manage a relationship with headquarters? They will not see.
I think more remotely, because one of the drivers in terms of what this is kind of brought out is how do we reduce travel and manage things more remotely. And that's what the HQ is also really pushing for. And Singapore probably feel is has managed it well so far, though there has been a spurt. So you're still safe traveling to Singapore, but I think the way forward is going to be more remote, more virtual, and less in person.
Sure. Thank you. A last question now, Rahul, to you is, the question is about, you talked about the gig economy, sounds very logical. Europe, obviously, there'll be a good social security, etc. But when you look at from India point of view, still the permanent job still seems to be attractive. So thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think, like I said, that, career skills and future careers are really transforming, and, there are different careers that will come to fore. Digital is actually transforming not just businesses, the business model, but also giving an opportunity to people to look at what are the areas and skills that they can develop and, really progress in those areas. So from a skills point of view, definitely, I think people who are today learning more about, so if you look online, so when I go to LinkedIn, I see so many people doing online courses and certifications related to technology, related to various topics, certifications. I think most of them are being focused only on developing yourself, but also in the long run, developing your capabilities. So what we are also seeing is that the technical skills of what as a base of what you want to be able to understand or live on is becoming more and more important. So for example, if automation was to become more aggressive in today's time and age, which it definitely will, what will
Rahul, it's breaking. Can you? I think we are losing you, Rahul. But I think you made your point, and I think it was quite clear in terms of how it has to be a balance between the two. You have to obviously keep the balance on both the sides. With this, I think we have extended on our time quite substantially. But I think to really thank you all the panelists here. It was wonderful to have a chat with you. Really hear some excellent experiences, exciting journey which you guys have. It was a roller coaster for last 4 or 5 weeks, and I think that they still the miles to go. You're not yet all set to just relax now. I was talking with a couple of you a couple of days back. You were still working late in the night at 10, 11, and so forth. So I think from that perspective, it's fantastic experience to hear from you. As I said, you are a COVID warrior for different reasons, and we salute you for what you are doing now. So thank you for each one of you to taking this time out and being a panelist. I also take the opportunity to thank ACCA for being an event partner and encouraging us always to come back and engage with the industry, to come back and engage with you all and share some of the experiences, learning and challenges. So thank you, ACCA, for being an event partner. And I thanks the entire team of Shared Services Forum for putting this together, particularly Pallavi as well. Thank you all. Really appreciate. Have a great day ahead and have a great time. See you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.